Well, how are you? I'm Kevin Fell, your brand new host of the Western Ontario Super Hockey League's podcast, and yet still no theme song, but that is something we're working on. I am looking for you, local singer-songwriters, composers, musicians. Get me your entries. We're going to make you the composer of the WOSHL podcast theme song. So it's up to you. I put it into your hands, and we will make a decision on that song in a couple of weeks. So it is episode 2. I haven't been fired yet. That's delightful news for sure. So as I continue to get used to the video side of things, we will start to get highlights back on. We do have a highlight pack, and we'll get to that shortly. But here's how the games panned out this weekend. It was a 3-game weekend with the Elora Rock playing back-to-back nights. They kicked off the return to play on Friday night as they took on the Strathroy Jets. Elora won that game 6-4. And then they made the trip down to Stratford to the William Allman Arena, and they took on the Stratford Fighting Irish, winning that game 7-3. The score doesn't do that game justice. It was a rather close affair until almost the end. And the blowout of the Western Ontario Super Hockey League was definitely the Thunder rolling in to take on the Elviston Killer Bees 10-1. We are going to look at all the goals from that game coming up shortly. If you would like a breakdown and the box scores from the weekend's results, easy to find, go to WOSHL.com. So there's the scores from this past weekend. It was a success to get the boys back on the ice, get all the teams rolling again, but there was some suspensions that were handed out as well. Yanni Skripoulos was suspended from the Elora Rock. He was suspended on Friday night for 5 games as well. Maverick Petrie from the Stratford Fighting Irish suspended on Saturday for 2 games. He returns February 19th. And Chad Heffernan from the Killer Bees also had a suspension on Saturday, and that is for 4 games. So, all right, so that's how that weekend, the first weekend, went last weekend, the return to play. This weekend, another busy one in the WOSHL as the Jets visit the Rock on Friday night. The Fighting Irish are in Alvertston to take on the Killer Bees on Saturday, and the Jets travel to Tillsonburg to take on the Thunder. How does the playoff picture shape up for the sprint to the Sleeman Cup, you might ask? Well, let's take a look at that. The Rock currently in first place. 15 wins, 2 losses. They have a winning percentage, which is just insane, of .882. The Jets in second place. 10 wins, 3 losses, a .733 winning percentage. The Fighting Irish, the young guns, if you will, are sitting in third with 7 wins, 7 losses up. They're sitting at .500. Tillsonburg Thunder sitting below the Irish in 4th place with 7 wins, 10 losses. And the Alvertston Killer Bees, 1 win, 15 losses. They are sitting at the bottom of the pile right now. So that is how the sprint is going for the Sleeman Cup. Now, speaking of the Killer Bees and the Thunder, well, they had themselves quite a game last Saturday night. The score was 10-1 for the Tillsonburg Thunder. Here is the highlights from that tilt.
between the legs.
On Zoom, joining me for the podcast for the Western Ontario Super Hockey League is Bill Ryan, the Vice President of the league, and you are also the General Manager of the Tillsonburg Thunder. Let's start with league stuff, Bill. How do you feel that the return to play went last weekend?
I thought it went pretty well. We had 3 pretty high-spirited games. Results were all over the place, from close games to not so close games, but certainly a lot of rust on the players as some of the different penalties and things that got called were more conditioning penalties, I would call it, hooks, trips, that kind of stuff, right? But overall, I thought the 3 games went pretty good considering guys hadn't been on the ice for 7 weeks, I think it was. So.
And how do you feel that 7 weeks will affect the league right now with injuries and everything else moving forward?
Well, I'm a little concerned because obviously guys' conditioning won't be at what it typically would be this time of year when you're rolling into just about playoffs. Normally guys are at the top of their game. Some guys are going to need these next 3 or 4 or 5 games to get in shape. I worry, like anybody that's involved with the league or a team, that somebody's going to get hurt as they're working their way back into shape. So fingers crossed that doesn't happen.
We did see an injury. I don't know how major it was because he did come back to the bench. It was the goaltender for the Aurora Rock, the goalie that started the game. His name has slipped my mind, but he ended up being
Tony
injured.
Marshall.
Yeah, Marshall was taken off the ice, and then I'm not sure. Do you have a report on that and whether he is good to go moving forward?
I haven't heard anything from the Aurora guys on that. Actually, I was talking to them yesterday. I never thought to ask, but I'm sure we can find out and get you an update.
Well, that'd be awesome because, he was back on the bench, so it wasn't anything too serious. He wasn't heading to the hospital or anything, but it was definitely looked like I haven't played in a while. He stretched to make a pass and needed a little help off the ice.
I have no idea how goalies do it with those groins anyway. So
no, I have no idea.
I get blown in warm up.
Listen, I suited up as a goalie in 1 practice, and I said never again.
Been there.
Yeah, been there, done that. It's over. So we are zooming in on the playoffs here. So that means rosters are finalized.
Yes. Yeah, everybody finalized their roster on Wednesday. As of midnight Wednesday, the rosters were frozen. Anybody that needed to be released was released. Anybody that was released that could have been picked up on Wednesday, but I haven't heard of any teams picking anybody up by the looks of it. So everybody has their rosters set in stone. An expanded roster. We let them carry, or I should say, we let all teams, including us, carry a 30-man roster with 3 goaltenders, right? So I think we're good to go. Obviously, we carried the larger roster, worried a little bit about, COVID and injury and all of those things that are happening in this very unusual season.
So you've created somewhat of a taxi squad, if you will.
Yeah, I guess. Yeah, there's going to be, guys that they know their role is maybe not to dress every game, but to be available when they're available, right? Last thing we want to do is have to cancel a game because 7 guys are positive with COVID or, injured or whatever else could happen, right? So.
And we are making the sprint for the Sleeman Cup. Do you mind putting on your GM hat for a couple of questions here?
I'm open.
Perfect. I like that. So the sprint for the Sleeman Cup is here. The standings are, they're pretty tight when you get into 3 and 4, really. What do the Thunder have to do to make a couple of moves and maybe leapfrog the Stratford Fighting Irish?
Well, we gotta run the table. We gotta win the remaining games because Stratford's got a couple of games in hand. We had a pretty rough stretch there in late November, December with, I don't want to make excuses. We lost the games, but, we had 7 or 8 guys out injured and we were band-aiding together roster for a period of time there. And it cost us a lot of points in the standings. So we pretty much have to win out. We're healthy now. It looks like most guys are back, except a couple of guys that are maybe back in a few weeks. But, at the end of the day, we want to leapfrog over Stratford if possible, but we've got our work cut out for us with them having a couple of games in hand.
What are your expectations for the rest of the year?
Win the whole thing.
That's it, eh?
I don't have any other expectation any year when I help build the team, right? So I believe we have a roster that can be incredibly competitive. When you look at our top 20 guys, although they've only played together a few times this year, I believe that we have a good enough team to compete with the Alaras, the the Strathroys, the Stratfords, the Alvinstons, and take a run at the whole thing. But we've got some pretty competitive teams there. There's some teams there that you never know who's going to win night in and night out, and that makes for a great league.
Well, 100%. So what goes into putting the team together? What went into you finalizing the 30-player roster? Like, how much do you sit and look at their past games, and how much thought goes into it with the coaching staff?
Commitment's a big part of it. The coaches obviously have, an idea of what they want in a certain role on the first line or the first power play, or, the fourth line if they want to use it for an energy line or a penalty killing line. So the coaches have a lot of input on that. To me, the most important thing is what's your commitment the rest of the way. You know what I mean? You can have 10 former, professional hockey players, but if they're going to show up every fourth game, they're not much good to you. You need guys that from here to the end are available when you need them to be available, right? So that's kind of how our decision-making process went. We didn't have to release too many anyway. The 3 or 4 guys that we had to release weren't going to be able to play much more this year anyway. So, and we didn't have any real difficult decisions. It's always difficult to let any player go, but our roster kind of set itself this year, along with the work we did to bring the players in, of course.
Now, let's talk about putting the work into bringing the players. Where do you find some of these guys?
Well, at this level of hockey, there's a couple of ways of recruiting, but the most valuable way of recruiting is through your own players. So at this level, you got a bunch of guys that are returning back to their home communities. They want to play with their buddies. So, a good hockey player brings another good hockey player. So the key is finding that one solid hockey player, and then he gets, 3 or 4 buddies that get the itch to play competitively. Next thing you know, you've got a nice tight room of guys who are friends and played with and against each other for years. So really your best recruiting is bringing in a quality player or two, and the other players seem to follow suit. We've had a little bit of a niche this year with, some guys from the Hagersville, Caledonia, Haldeman folk area that have come over and joined us this year. A few guys I've been talking to for years finally decided to play, and, some of the other guys followed suit. And then their teammates, of course, did some recruiting.
And do you have a formula when you're putting a team together, Bill? Like, do you go, okay, I need these kind of players on this line. I need these kind of players here. I need these kind of defensemen to round out the lineup. Or is it just, I want good players?
To some extent, I would take the good player over the particular role any day. Tillsburg teams have always been kind of designed to be speed teams with a strong puck possession team. So I like the guy who likes to have the puck. Now, of course, our coaches may tell you differently, but, I obviously do some of the recruiting, as do the coaches and the fellow players. But to me, I like to bring in the talent, but the talent that has the heart and has some pedigree that has won at other levels. If you look at a lot of our roster, it's former captains, assistant captains, scoring leaders, Sutherland Cup title winners. Obviously you want to bring in the guys that have a background of success to be successful.
And do you look for a certain junior league, or do you just look for, I guess you just answered it. You look for good hockey players.
Exactly. I don't care where they come from. Obviously we have some restrictions in our league with the various points system that we have for the level of players. It could easily fill your team with a bunch of guys that played, in the AHL or the ECHL if you had unlimited budgets, or, you didn't have these point systems. But at the end of the day, you got to go to the, the GOJHL, the OJHL, and find the, the top tier player in those leagues, which that's really what you're going to build your team around, and then supplement it with a couple of ex-pros and ex-CIS or NCAA players, right?
Absolutely. And how are you feeling about this weekend for the Thunder?
I think we're healthy finally. I think we've got a pretty good roster available to us. So depending how the coach puts it all together, I think we've got a good shot at Strathroy. We've had great games with them every time we beat them. Every game's come down to a weird bounce or a penalty call at the wrong time here or there. So we're due to break out against them.
And are you confident, as the vice president of the league, that things will roll smoothly into the Sleeman Cup?
I sure hope so. All the indicators are pointing that way. We have no control over the government and the pandemic and, COVID, but the league itself, I think the league itself is primed to run along tickety-boo. We have 5 strong franchises with 5 strong owners. So we may not always be agreeing over the next 6 weeks or 8 weeks or whatever it takes to finish up the cup. But I think the goal is the same for everybody. Let's have a successful Sleeman Cup run and crown our first winner.
Now, is it hard as, let's call you the president, Jamie Petrie, yourself, when you guys sit down and get ready to return to play after the rules have been dropped? Is it nerve-wracking because things can just change like that, as we've seen throughout this pandemic?
Oh, absolutely. I keep waiting, as they say, for the other shoe to fall or shoe to drop. We keep waiting for this, next pandemic, or we've kind of been conditioned all of a sudden for the next variant of COVID to come along or whatever. So that's always in the back of our mind. That's the only real thing that I see would prevent us from moving forward. And it's, knock on wood, the indicators are that we're moving in the right direction, and COVID's here to stay, and we've got to develop a plan long term for everybody just to live with it and hopefully, avoid it and stay healthy, and all those things. All the teams have had a few players exposed here or there, and at the end of the day, nobody's been seriously sick. It's just been, deal with it, get over it, and move on. Knocking on wood, fortunately.
Well, that's just it. You just deal with it and roll forward, and hopefully things work out, right?
Exactly. And, we control the things we can't control. We can only control what's on the ice and how the league's running and the league product, right?
Yeah. Is there anything else while I got you on Zoom here you want to mention?
I think what I really would like to mention to anybody paying attention is, it's time to get out and start watching more of these games. Fans have been a little slow coming back, obviously, the last weekend or so. There's a lot of nerves out there with, let's be honest, our fans are more, the baby boomers are probably the biggest part of our fan population, and a lot of them are nervous to get out and about around the arena. I want to commend all the facilities that are being run throughout the league. They're all doing a great job of keeping them clean, making sure people are protected, social distancing, wearing the masks, being screened properly. And I don't think there's any fear for people to come on out to the games now. And the quality of hockey is phenomenal. At the senior level, it always is. I'm sorry, I shouldn't use senior. Jamie doesn't like that word, but at the WSHL level, the hockey's phenomenal, and it's great entertainment for your $5, $6, $8, $10, whatever they charge at any given arena. People need to get out of the house and start enjoying. If they can't, obviously we have the sport option. So.
Mm-hmm, yeah, absolutely. And how can people watch games if they're not ready to go to the rink? Why don't you give that a plug? Well, we got you.
Sure. They can go onto the WSHL website, WSHL.com. There's a tab that says WSHL Live, which I got to rename that tab because it's not really only live. It's live plus previously played games you can click on and watch. So when you click on that, click on the Watch on Sportfeed link. It'll bring you to our landing page, and you'll see the events for the upcoming games. Most guys don't put their event on until the day before game time. So if you go on Friday and the link is there, or if it's not there Saturday, it'll be there. You click on the link, it takes you right to the live game. Some games have play-by-play with guys like Kevin doing the voice in Stratford, or some games are like ours right now. They're just a live feed of the game with a cameraman and the software running. I will apologize occasionally with the live feeds, though. You do have to listen to the crowd noise and the passion of some fans. I guess you would say that all the cameras have microphones on them. So, but
sometimes some interesting language gets picked up. It feels
like being at the rink.
So you
exactly. It feels like being at the rink.
Yeah, you're there. It's a good I'm at the rink feeling is what you get when you watch one.
Exactly.
Well, exactly. Perfect.
But I would just like to say that everybody needs to, come on back out to the rinks, start getting back to somewhat normal. Crowds were okay on the weekend, but this time of year, typically you have more. But I do understand the people's hesitation to come out. Most arenas now, the bars are open. I hear the concession stands are opening up, most of them over the next couple of weekends. So we will be back to some semblance of normal. And feel free to talk to any of us at the rink if you have any concerns about anything at all. And more importantly, take a look at those sponsor names around the rinks, on the players' backs, and behind Kevin's head there, and get out and support some of these guys that are helping us all keep these things running for their enjoyment and being affordable. Like you come to a hockey game for $10 instead of $20. It's because of sponsors like Sleeman's and or Georgian Bay Fire and Safety Company I work for. All kinds of different companies that sponsor. They don't contribute thousands of dollars, but it's enough to keep the cost down for everybody to enjoy the game at a reasonable price.
Well, and that's the thing, right? It is hard to find a family-friendly, inexpensive entertainment venue for you and the kids to go to. And I think the Western Ontario Super Hockey League is that outlet for families to go. Everyone can enjoy it. And that's what I've loved about it so far.
Exactly. Most rinks you can take your whole family for about $30. That's a pretty reasonable night out. Obviously you're going to spend maybe another $20 on the goodies for the kids. They all have their hand out for the popcorn and the candy and the slushies, which are big in the Tillsonburg Arena. But you can't go to the theaters anymore. It costs you $50 just get through the door. For 3 or 4 people. So
yeah, absolutely. And
definitely a value.
It's a great value. It's great entertainment. There's things for the kids to do. There's things for the parents to do. Where else can people get information both about the Thunder and the WOSHL? You've said the website. There is also socials.
Absolutely. Tillsonburg has both Facebook, or I should say Facebook, Twitter, Instagram. We have connections on all those social media sites. Obviously, we have tillsonburgthunder.ca, which is linked through the WASA website as well. Tillsonburg News gives us great coverage. The Woodstock Sentinel Review gives us some pretty good coverage. 519 Sports, Daryl Smart Sports Network. Any of those organizations, they're typically giving the WSHL and the Thunder coverage throughout the course of a week, couple weeks, month kind of thing.
Perfect, Bill. Well, thanks for taking some time.
Kevin Fell here on the podcast too, of course.
Yeah, I can get you up to date on what's going on as well. If you're in the Stratford area, 107.1 Juice FM, that'll keep that'll keep you up to date as well. So thank you so much for joining me and taking some time out of your busy day. And
no problem. You're welcome.
As the GM, sir, good luck this weekend and the rest of the way in the season.
Thank you very much.
So a big thanks to Bill Ryan, General Manager of the Tillsonburg Thunder and the Vice President of the WOSHL. Thank you for joining me today. And this weekend, we got a few games coming up that should be beauties. The Jets are visiting the Rocks. That's Friday night, 8:30 puck drop in Elora. And then the Irish are on the road visiting the Elverton Killer Bees Saturday at 6:30, and the Jets again with a 2-game weekend and a back-to-back in Tillsonburg, taking on the Thunder on Saturday at 7:30. I will have recaps, and hopefully I figure out this whole highlight thing and have that for you next week on the Western Ontario Super Hockey League podcast as well. Don't forget, hook me up with a theme song. I'm looking for it. I'm Kevin Fell, your host. Thank you for joining me this week. We'll be back next week.